From above, the Philippines looks like a country shattered into pieces. 7,000 islands scattered across the western Pacific, where mountains drop straight into open ocean, and the next town is often across a channel of deep water. But ordinary life does not pause because the geography is fragmented. People still have to reach an office. Rice, cooking gas, vegetables, construction rebar, and packaged goods still have to cross open straits. And those connections have to function across a storm corridor where typhoons are an annual reality, not a rare surprise. The remarkable thing is not merely the number of islands on the map. It is that every single day, tens of millions of people live, trade, and travel across them as a single connected nation. So when the asphalt stops at the edge of the water, how does the journey keep going? And what happens when that chain is stretched across hundreds of kilometers of open sea? To understand how daily life works here, we have to look closely at the moving seam between the islands. A provincial highway can feel completely standard for hours. A passenger van or a long-distance bus can follow concrete through coconut plantations and coastal towns, only to arrive not at an intersection, but at a concrete pier extending into a strait. The engines idle. Passengers step out to buy water. Cargo trucks line up along the shoulder of the road. The route has not ended, but the pavement has. Across the Philippines, that is simply the baseline reality of overland transport. More than 100 million people live across these islands, and outside the central plains of Luzon, getting anywhere of significant distance means dealing with the sea. That does not mean everyone owns a boat. It means the highway system itself has been adapted to the water. A family visit, a shipment of fresh produce from Mindanao to Manila, or a bus trip between regional capitals requires stepping onto a moving deck before the trip can finish. 2. Cities might look close on a map, separated by only 20 or 30 kilometers of blue water. In reality, that gap requires a ticketing queue, a departure window, a tidal clearance, and a ship capable of taking hundreds of tons of rolling weight across rough currents. A drive becomes a drive, a wait, a crossing, and another drive. That is the rhythm the map hides. The sea is not just open space, it is a working gap that has to be crossed continuously. At the water's edge, movement does not stop, it rolls aboard. On the trunk transport corridors that link Luzon, the Visayas, and Mindanao, the connection is direct. The strong Republic Nautical Highway turned the sea into a moving extension of the national road network. Roll-on, roll-off vessels, or ro-ro ferries, pull open their bow ramps directly against the concrete terminal. Long-haul buses drive straight onto the lower car deck, parking inches apart. Heavy trucks loaded with bananas, poultry, or cement pull in right behind them. Motorbikes squeeze into the remaining spaces along the steel bulkheads. Passengers walk up interior stairs to the passenger deck, while their luggage remains inside the bus below. This is where maritime transit stops feeling like a nautical voyage and functions purely as highway infrastructure. The vehicles do not unload their freight to be repacked into cargo holds. They stay intact. For a bus driver running between Davao and Manila, a 30-hour trip across multiple islands, the ferry deck is simply another scheduled leg of the route. The loading ramp is the mechanical hinge between land and water. On one side, wheels turn on pavement. On the ship, the entire road moves across the strait. When the ramp drops onto the opposite slipway, the engines restart and the land journey immediately resumes. That system works for the major national corridors, but goods and passengers must reach far beyond the primary ferry terminals. A container ship or a large vehicle ferry can move massive volume between major provincial ports, but thousands of communities sit along shallow bays, coral reefs, and small islands where a large vessel cannot dock. That is where the scale of transport has to change. At regional hub ports, national freight breaks down into smaller units. Cargo that arrived in standard shipping containers or large trucks is transferred to wooden-hulled motorized outrigger boats. known across the archipelago as bankers. These vessels, stabilized by long bamboo outriggers on either side, look light and fragile compared to steel ships. In reality, they are essential working infrastructure. Their shallow draft allows them to navigate shallow waters, pass over shallow reefs, and land directly on sandy shores or modest wooden piers where no deep water berth exists. At a small island landing, the modern mechanics of cranes and forklifts disappear. The work returns entirely to human hands. Local crews wade into waist-deep water or balance across narrow, wooden gangplanks carrying sacks of rice, crates of canned goods, corrugated metal roofing, and blocks of ice on their shoulders. A large ship solves the problem of moving bulk freight across hundreds of miles of open water. The outrigger boat and the shoreline crew solve the problem of access, delivering the cargo to the exact beach or village where people live. Without these smaller handoffs, national supply chains would simply hit a wall at the major ports. The outrigger boat is not an outdated leftover from the past. It is an engineered solution to a coastline that large commercial shipping cannot serve. Once those goods reach dry land, the journey still has to reach the household. In almost every neighborhood, rural village, and island settlement, that final connection happens through the sari-sari store. These tiny family-run convenience shops, built into the front windows or porches of homes, are the economic anchor of daily life. A national logistics system operates in metric tons, shipping containers, and pallet loads. A working family often operates day to day, or even meal to meal. The sari-sari store translates bulk supply into the exact scale of ordinary life. It takes a master case of cooking oil and sells it in tiny plastic pouches. It opens a carton of laundry powder to sell single-use sachets. It sells individual eggs, single cigarettes, small bags of sugar, and individual packets of instant coffee. The store acts as a neighborhood micro-warehouse, keeping vital goods within walking distance, so residents do not need to make expensive, time-consuming trips to town markets for basic necessities. Alongside this traditional micro-retail, modern digital infrastructure has moved rapidly across the same terrain. Mobile wallets and digital payment networks have penetrated deep into small communities, allowing people to transfer money, pay bills, and buy mobile data instantly from a basic smartphone. A fisherman on a remote island can receive payment from a buyer in the city in seconds. A shopkeeper can settle accounts with a distributor without holding stacks of physical cash. Yet the speed of the digital transaction can create an illusion. The money moves at the speed of a cellular signal, but the goods must still travel at the speed of the boat. A merchant can order stock through an app instantly, but if monsoonal winds kick up 3-meter waves in the strait, the delivery still sits waiting at the pier. Digital platforms reduce friction in information and finance, but they do not flatten the ocean or calm the weather. The coordination that keeps this archipelago functioning is not only mechanical and digital, it is deeply social. Across thousands of communities, collective daily life relies on bayanihan, the deep-rooted tradition of communal unity and mutual cooperation, historically represented by neighbors gathering to physically lift and carry a traditional nipa hut to a new location. Bayanihan remains an active social mechanism. When a cargo boat needs to be hauled ashore before a sudden squall, when a damaged footbridge needs immediate repair, or when an entire coastal community must prepare for an incoming storm, people organize their labor directly. Bayanihan does not replace paved roads, seawalls, or national disaster budgets, but in a landscape where formal public resources are often hours or days away across open water, practical neighborhood coordination is a necessary line of defense. Relationships and shared effort function as informal infrastructure, filling the gaps between what the state provides and what daily survival requires. That resilience is tested constantly. The Philippines sits squarely along the Pacific typhoon belt and the volcanic ring of fire. When a severe tropical storm approaches, the entire maritime network shuts down. Ferry authorities halt departures. Coast Guard stations hold vessels in port. Supply lines freeze, leaving hundreds of trucks queued along coastal highways and stranding thousands of travelers at terminals. For days, islands become truly isolated. When the storm clears, the restart is immediate. Port gates open, ramps drop, crews return to the gangplanks, and the flow of motorbikes, trucks, and outrigger boats resumes. The sea has not stopped being an obstacle, and the geography has not grown any easier. But across thousands of islands, the journey finds a way to keep moving forward.